Early September in 1906, the Bronx Zoo in New York opened a new attraction. People lined up for a spectacle. In the orang-utan cages, the audience could now also see a human being. Otto Benga was an enslaved pygmy from Congo Free State. Benga had his teeth filed as a child. In New York, he was presented as a cannibal. The New York Times reported the human being happened to be a bushman, one of a race that scientists do not rate high in the human scale. The story of Benga is an extreme case of something that once was extremely common: the practice of showcasing people in zoos.
There was also a sign that said, please don't feed the Congolese.
You could see them cook, you could see them eat, you could see them dance.
It's been on for almost 100 years and was seen by hundreds of millions around the globe.
A woman gives a banana to a child.
How could this happen? I want to show you the different perspectives of the people involved and why this was erased from our history. Hey, I know you want to watch the video, and we're going to, but first I hope you give me a few moments to explain to you how this video even exists, because it costs a lot of time and energy and money to make, and generally I often pay my videos by working with sponsors. Often sponsors don't like controversial topics, like, I don't know, human zoos. Luckily, there is a sponsor that does care about supporting more challenging topics, as long as they're presented factual and in an unbiased way, and that sponsor is Odoo. Odoo is the best business management software. What's nice about Odoo is that you don't need multiple monthly subscriptions, but you get one subscription for all your business needs. Odoo offers over 45 apps to run your business on one single platform. Nowadays it's kind of a cliche that everyone needs a website, but you do. So with Odoo, you can easily make one with the website app. I've done it for this video, and it allows you to make a website in just 4 simple steps. There's no technical skill required. You can define the type of site you need, your sector and your objectives. You can choose a color palette or upload your logo so that your site matches the colors of your logo. You can easily add pages and features, and finally choose a theme. And if you then have the website but you want to change something, it's easy to customize it with a simple drag and drop feature. You can add content blocks with text and images wherever you want. AI is even integrated and helps you write or rewrite text. The first Odoo app is free for life with unlimited hosting and support. And with the website app, you can even get a custom domain name for a whole year. So click the link in the description and try your first app for free. So I'm in Germany on my way to Hamburg, where I will interview the professor Jurgen Zimmerer about human zoos in Germany.
On Sunday afternoons, 10,000s of people from Hamburg flocked to here to see wild animals and wild people.
Hagenbeck Zoo is founded by Carl Hagenbeck. He started in the animal trade, but at one point he decided to diversify his business.
So in 1875 he started exhibiting people from primitive tribes, so to speak. That's a racist language of the time, and he was very successful.
How did this guy work? First, he needed to recruit people that fit a certain standard. They had to be beautiful or ugly in the eyes of the Europeans. So they would like tall and slender Somalis that looked like Caucasians, Kwakyoto women with artificially elongated heads, or Zala women with lip plugs. Their homes and their clothes should be as different from Europeans as possible. They had to fit this idea of an exotic people. One recruiter for Hagenbeck refused contracts for some Sioux Indians because they had cut their hair short. And when you read his diary, you can find him complaining all the time that people don't look typical enough. To get people to the zoo, Hagenbeck had to do marketing. Nowadays, we would say that Hagenbeck was a genius marketeer. He knew what the people wanted. So he would tell the audience that they were seeing the most savage people, that they're going to see cannibals. Now, this wasn't true, it was clickbait, but it sure did attract the crowds. At the start of the human zoos, people were just shown. But over time this evolved. Now they became performers. They would do a show of 40 minutes, about 7 to 8 times a day, for a paying audience. And they also didn't perform in one place. They traveled as a group in a troupe. Hagenbeck was one of the most successful organizers, but he definitely wasn't alone. Maybe you've seen this image before. I get it in my feed every few months. It's a map of Europe, showing countries that hosted human zoos. But this map is not correct. To get a better picture, I've been doing a lot of research. I've even put on the glasses. Talking to experts and reading books and combining different maps, I found something that really surprised me, because human zoos were way more common than what these maps show. There are exhibitions all over Europe, but not just in cities of Western colonial powers. Troops would travel to Central and Eastern Europe. There were many exhibitions in the United States. It's even happening in Asia. This phenomenon starts around 1850 and goes on until the Second World War. How could this become so widespread? The interest in people that look different is as old as time. But when the Europeans started to colonize the world, they suddenly came into contact with a lot of different people. So when Columbus goes back to Spain, he takes a number of Arawak people with him. In his diary, he wrote they could be, quote, good servants. But the start of the human zoo can be traced back to a Khoi woman from South Africa. Sarah, or Saartje Baartman, was an enslaved woman from Cape Town, born in 1789. She had a genetic trait called steatopedia, where fats deposits around the buttocks and abdomen. And she was just 20 when she was brought to London to be an attraction. Because of her appearance, she was marketed as the Hottentot Venus. She was made to perform next to dancing bears and women with beards. Baartman was chained, and visitors were encouraged to touch, pinch, or hit her behind with sticks. She drank liters of hard liquor to endure these humiliations, but her shows were a huge success. The police had to show up to contain the crowds, but eventually they also drew criticism. At one point, the anti-slavery African institution stepped in to end her, quote, shameful exploitation. A few years later, she was again shown in Paris. Here she died of illness, and she was then dissected by the French scientist Georges Cuvier. He had never, quote, seen a human head more similar to that of monkeys than this. Her brain and sexual organs were preserved, and the cast of her body was put on display in a French museum until the middle of the 1970s. Baartman was presented as a freak, but human zoos had a different message. Not that these peoples were freaks. No, they were meant to show the scientific explanation for a world where the white man was on top. I'm at the Museum Square. This is a place where tourists come to see famous painters like Rembrandt and Van Gogh. And as a kid, I used to hang out here all the time. There's a picture of me here when I'm like, 15 years old. And I had these headphones that I thought made me look so cool. I wore them all the time. But back then, I had no idea what happened here on the Museum Square in 1883 at the World's Fair. I have a map of the event, and it tells you what's happening. And it's a fun day out, right? So you have a champagne bar. There's food, there's French restaurants, there's German restaurants, and also Dutch and English. Not so sure about that. But next to all this fun, there's also a human zoo. In Amsterdam, they had the most important colony of the Netherlands on display. That was a traditional village with people from Indonesia. They even brought their instruments from Indonesia, but they changed them so to make sure that they could play the Dutch national anthem. People were allowed to walk around the villages from Indonesia, but the ones from the other Dutch colony, the one in Suriname, they were behind the fence. And we have pictures of all the people that were brought to this human zoo, from old to very young. We have these pictures because they were made by a scientist. The people he photographed were housed in a tent that is marked on the map, a comparative exposition of human races. As Europeans were sailing to more and more places in the world, they encountered many people that didn't look like them. They had different hair, different noses, a different skin color. Along the way, Europeans developed this idea that humanity was split in different races, and also that these races lived in different stages of development. Scientists wanted to study these races, but to do that they had to go to faraway places. This was expensive and often very dangerous. Human zoos gave the option to study many people directly. The curator for the American Smithsonian Museum, Charles Rao, who in 1876 wanted an exhibition to show the extremely low level of our distant ancestors and the evolution of the West compared with primitive societies. If you're an entrepreneur, this scientific attention is very welcome. Now you're organizing the show not just for entertainment, you're doing it for science. When Darwin published his theory of evolution, people twisted his words and claimed that humans evolved from monkeys. This started a huge search for the species that would connect us to primates, the missing link. And so you see, in 1904, when St. Louis organized the World Fair with the biggest human zoo in history, 10,000 non-Western people were brought there. About 20 million people visited the fair. And among these people were a ton of scientists. So this is a picture of a man from the 1904 exhibition. A potential missing link. Now the man was not the only one on display. They showed tribes from the Philippines to show Americans how uncivilized these people were. Even though this is how the people in the capital looked. It was the same for the Hagenbeck shows. By showing these people as savages, they carefully crafted a message. These people are ripe to be colonized. And who better than the white man to help them reach the next stage of evolution? So we have the organizers, we have the scientists, but how did the people that actually went there respond to this? What would people see in these shows? What were their reactions? It's pretty hard to say because, well, we don't have the sources. We don't have a ton of memoirs or diary entries that talk about this. So when it came to Otto Benga, you know, the man in the cage in New York, the reporter, he notes that people laughed, but then they looked away with an expression on their face, such as one sees in a play with a sad ending. Faced with another human in a cage, one man says, quote, "Something about it I don't like." After huge protests from priests, the show was stopped. Now, Otto Benga is an extreme case. Generally, the people or performers were not presented in cages, but they often were behind wires to separate the crowds from the performers. There are some examples of people protesting. In the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, we have a moment saying, quote, "I've been visiting the exhibition of the Armenians to find out that the poor people aren't allowed to wear clothes." She complains that it is a poor showing of the impresario. But overall, it seems people didn't really think twice. These exhibitions and traveling shows were extremely popular. In the German city of Breslau, or common day Wrocław, a Tunisian troupe got 41,000 visitors in one day. A group from Samoa sold over 100,000 tickets. For most people, it would be the first time they would see a person that wasn't white. They reacted in different ways. Sometimes they would call the performers names, throw bananas or jeer at them. But there are also reports of people trying to communicate in all these different languages. They're trying to connect with the people from these lands from far away. Sometimes they admired the performance. There could also be interactions. The troops would not always sleep in the zoos. They often had lodging outside of the exhibition area. They went out into the nightlife. Europeans also had erotic fascinations with these non-Europeans, and there have been reports of sexual affairs. Generally, it was okay if a white man had an affair with a non-European woman, but the other way around, that was a problem. How was this for the performers, the people in the zoos? So this is the Atomium. It's an icon of the city of Brussels, and I remember as a kid seeing pictures of it and thinking it looked very cool. It's a crystal iron molecule, and obviously it shows technology, it shows progress, and it shows the atomic age. It was erected for the 1958 World Fair, but at the same time they were showing this piece of modernity literally in its shadows there was a human zoo.
The goal was to exhibit them during the World Fair in Brussels, but then at night to move them to Tervuren in the woods, where we are now, and so to keep them away from the city and the lure of alcohol and the nightlife. Yeah. We have a film here in the collections where you see how the Congolese were being served by a white waiter, and so they look at him like, what's happening here? Because it's the opposite of what was happening in Congo, of course. Yeah.
The Brussels story tells us that these zoos could be humiliating for the performers.
A woman gives a banana to a child. You can imagine what the Belgian public did as well. They were looking at them, pointing fingers, maybe. Yeah, it must have been quite an ordeal.
They could even be deadly.
Now we're going to the cemetery of Tervuren. There's a grave of a baby. This is the grave of Just Bonaventure Langa. He was born in Kinshasa, September 57, and he died in Leuven, May 58. So during the World Exhibition, and it's indicated at the bottom, Congo pense à toi, so Congo is thinking about you.
And people had died before. In 1897, there was another zoo in Brussels.
The 7 Congolese that died during the World Exhibition of 97 were first buried in a common grave because they were not baptized. So they were put among the prostitutes and the suicides, and then in the 1950s they moved again, and they got a better place next to the church, and now they have separate graves with their name on it.
For those who didn't die, the experience was restrictive.
So during the World Fair and the installation of the human zoo, the contact between Congolese and public was avoided. So there was a fence between the two. There was also a sign that said, please don't feed the Congolese. And so they were really treated as animals in the zoo. And at that time we had 6 million Belgians, so 1 out of 6 people came to see the exhibition. So it was really, well, for colonial propaganda, it was a success.
As tragic as these facts are, they were exceptions. Having people die was very bad for business. And even though there are many stories of exploitation and misbehavior, some historians don't want to downplay the agency that these people had. Most of the performers had a contract. They were paid for their labor. So you can find reports of the members of the troupe negotiating for higher pay. One Sami group negotiated in their contract that someone would look after their livestock while they were performing. And some groups made this their job, coming back for more than one tour. Even though there were big power imbalances, it could be a way to make relatively good money. And when it came to agency, the 1958 exhibition ended prematurely.
Which closed after 3 weeks because they didn't agree with the conditions.
But not all historians think that focusing on the agency is the most important part.
What does voluntarily mean in a world where you need the money to survive, where you have no other job offerings?
So how does the practice of human zoos end?
I think it basically ends because people start to travel. The moment you have film, it becomes less interesting to go here and see 20, 30 people in a staged village.
Natives mourn a member of their tribe who has died. The ceremony lasts 2 days with the body laid out and tribesmen in a circle about it. Captain Ned Blood told Mr. Holstrom sheep could be bred here, that tribesmen would welcome the scheme. When tribal flocks are established, native women or Merries will be taught spinning and weaving. They learn that wool makes clothes. And imagine the advertisements. Suit with extra pair of pants, all for 1 stone axe and a bird of paradise feather. White man has brought new hope to Wagi Valley.
So what should we do about this history? In the Hamburg Zoo, I didn't see any mention of it. I asked the guide if there was some information in the park about the human zoos.
Ja, wir bieten das an, dass wir eine historische Führung machen, wo wir das auf jeden Fall erzählen. Weiß ich gerade nicht so genau, ob da auch ein Schild angebaut ist.
Okay.
Genau. Ich denke mal, oder ich hoffe sehr, und das arbeiten viele jetzt auch mit daran, dass man da eben das nochmal ein bisschen präsenter macht und ähnliches.
Behind on this platform, you would have non-European people described as savages, as cannibals, as the lowest rung in civilization, perform for a white audience. But now, nothing would remind you of this history. Outside the zoo, the first thing I saw when I arrived was a giraffe with a man on it. A man with clothes on, but with an unmistakable black complexion.
Why would a black man sit on a giraffe in front of a zoo? Hagenbeck lacks a fundamental understanding of the racist nature of this Völkerschau and what they're exhibiting.
So should Hagenbeck do more to teach people about its history?
Oh, really? No, I didn't know that. Like, when was that?
Heard about it in general, but I did not know that was the history of this particular zoo.
I think the generation that's now in charge doesn't care too much about the history.
Maybe they think they would get less customers or something, so they don't show it or they don't talk about it.
But it's way back before our time, so to us it's just a history.
But is it really history? Now, we've come a long way since we put humans in zoos, but racism isn't really dead, is it? 64% of Americans think this is not the case, and this number is actually rising over the last years. But it's not just the US. When I was growing up in the Netherlands, there was this study, and 30% of the people thought that minorities were just inferior. And there have been so many studies that show this. A 2019 study in the UK showed that if you have a different ethnic background, but for their identical CV, you have to send 60% more applications to land an interview. And this number is about the same as 50 years ago. And this comes from somewhere. And I would say that the legacy of colonialism is a part of this. I think it's easy to look at colonialism and be like, well, that's something that happened a long time ago in countries far, far away. It doesn't have to do anything with us right now. But if you look at the zoos, this practice, it was happening all over the world in cities that we live in. According to some estimates, up to 1.5 billion people once visited a zoo like this, that maybe your great-grandparent has visited. And I think that brings colonialism and the effects of it very, very close to home.